Good morning and welcome to the August 10th edition of the Gold, Goats, and Guns Short News. My name's Tom Luongo. Let's get to it. So today we're going to talk about the sanctions on Turkey and the blow-up of the Turkish lira. Financial markets around the world are being rocked today because of the Turkish lira dropping like 15% overnight. President Trump just doubled the sanctions on steel and aluminum coming into Turkey, and that caused the lira, which was already in free fall, to collapse even further. So what's going on here? What is happening? Turkey's an ally of the U.S. nominally in that it's the second largest ground force in NATO, and yet the United States is now treating it like Russia. It's treating it like an enemy. What's going on here? Well, it's a very complicated story, but slowly over the course of the last 3 years, since the Russians moved into Syria to support the Assad regime against U.S.-backed jihadist forces in Syria, and if you don't believe me, that's well documented at this point, the Turks have slowly been moving away from that alliance. Originally in Syria, the invasion in Syria was a multi-pronged assault. The U.S. and Israel, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey were all involved in supporting Al-Qaeda/ISIS in trying to overthrow the Assad government. Everybody was supposed to get a piece of the pie. Turkey was going to wipe out the Kurds in the north along the Turkish southern border in northern Syria, and possibly even gain a significant amount of the Syrian landmass, most of Idlib and the area around Afrin and Aleppo, which is what President Erdogan was promised during all of this. It was very obvious from his support of this policy early on that was what he was promised. Well, that changed when the Russians intervened, and everybody's involvement in this was exposed. So that's the roots of this. Then we fast forward after Turkey shoots down a Russian Su-24 in November of 2015, and Putin doesn't respond other than some mild sanctions on like Turkish tomatoes and travel bans and whatnot. Eventually, over the course of the next couple of months, the relationship between Turkey and Russia improves. And once that starts, once Turkey started to not directly support the continued attempted destruction of Syria, things started to change in the background. There were rumors of Erdogan talking with Assad behind the scenes and whatnot. This culminated in the July 2015 attempt on Erdogan's, or 2016 attempts on Erdogan's regime, where he was almost overthrown. Putin saved his life, and Iran was involved in helping Erdogan get out of the country. And that changed everything. And from there, it's been a slow grind of the Turks slowly but surely repudiating U.S. foreign policy objectives in the Middle East. And now to the point today where Turkey is actively moving against U.S. desires in northern Syria by pushing towards Manbij, by doing all sorts of things. Take it 2 or 3 steps further, you now have the Turkish Stream pipeline, right? You also have Turkey buying nuclear reactors from the United States. Turkey is a massive energy importer. They buy a lot of Iranian oil. They buy a lot of Russian. They're going to buy a lot more Russian gas. They're going to buy a lot of Russian uranium, right? Going forward. Moreover, China is also Turkey's biggest partner. So this collapse of the lira is a hybrid war attempt by the United States to bring Turkey back into the fold. That's what's going on. That's the underlying problem here. And I've been talking about it in these terms for months, and I've also been telling you that China and Russia, and to a lesser extent Iran, but they will all work to back Turkey in their attempt, in Turkey's attempt to extricate themselves from NATO. This is ultimately the prize here. And this is why we're so angry with Russia. This is why we continue to plop major sanctions onto Russia as whatever we can. This is why Trump has opened up a massive trade war with China. Okay? Because the political establishment in the United States and the banking sector and the Davos crowd or the shadow government, whatever you want to call them, they don't want to lose Turkey. Turkey is a major portion of their geopolitical goals because of its geographical location. If the United States loses Turkey, they lose the entire Eastern Mediterranean. In fact, they probably lose the entire Mediterranean and the Black Sea, right? All of it. Incirlik, the Turkish air base, is a major logistical resupply point for us. And now the United States is talking about putting sanctions on Russia that will keep Aeroflot from being able to fly to the United States. Russians can just shut down their airspace for our resupply into Afghanistan. You have to understand this is all the stuff that's going on now. So now why is this happening? So at any point, the Turks could have just knuckled under here. They could have said, okay, enough. We could have given back Pastor Brunson, who's obviously a CIA agent, and it's obviously just a casus belli to feed to stupid libs. I'm sorry, shit libs. That's racist! They could have not bought S-400 missile defense systems. They could have done all of these things, but they chose not to, knowing full well what the response from the United States was going to be. This has been brewing for months. The whole sanctions war thing started right after Putin's State of the Union address in March, where he unveiled all these new weapons that have changed the geopolitical game board and forced the United States to remove all of its aircraft carriers from the Mediterranean. So Turkey could get off this merry-go-round immediately. All they have to do is give up their sovereignty. And Erdogan just worked really hard to get basically dictatorial control. So now what's happening next? Well, I've got an article up on my blog right now talking about the real problem. What's the real problem now is that the Turkish corporations are indebted externally to the tune of over $200 billion and payable in U.S. dollars. And that's why the currency is collapsing. That's why Turkish sovereign bonds are collapsing. That's why this is happening. Because there's a sincere need for dollars as capital flees out of the country. Turkey could institute capital controls tomorrow and stop this. They haven't done it. They could raise interest rates to 30% tomorrow, and they haven't done it. They can ask the IMF for a bailout, and they haven't done it. So now the question is why? Because when you owe the bank $1,000, it's your problem. When you owe the bank $222 billion, it's the bank's problem. See, sanctions and debt cut two ways. When you sanction somebody and you cut off their ability to do business, you also cut off their ability and you cut off access to the currencies that they need to run their business or to service their debt. Well, the people who are holding the bonds are the ones who are going to book the losses if the company defaults on the debt. Is everybody going out there today and buying incredibly expensive credit default swap against Turkish corporate debt? I wonder what those rates are today. They're probably more expensive than just defaulting on the debt because, well, they should be. So now there's the problem. This is the key. The Turks have leverage here, and no one wants to talk about it. Everybody's talking about how that the Turks have to ask for a loan from the IMF, institute capital controls. Why? They're all talking their book. They all want the Turks to do this because they don't want to lose their asses. And the proof of the pudding is the euro is collapsing.
And here we go.
Expect max pain to be inflicted on everybody before somebody gives in. And I've got news for you. The Chinese stand ready with over $1 trillion in U.S. Treasury bonds to help the Turks bail all this stuff out. What's going to happen here is Erdogan is going to turn to the Turkish corporates and they're going to go, okay, who's actually a Turkish patriot? Who's going to accept and swap out their dollar-denominated debt for lira-denominated debt issued by the central bank? Well, the central bank takes it onto their balance sheet, swaps the debt out with the Chinese, problem solved. That's what's coming. No, what the United States wants is for Turkey to get back on the debt-based merry-go-round. They want that slave collar fitted back around Erdogan's neck, and Erdogan's saying no. And he's going to get the popular support to do so because this is an obvious hybrid war attempt at regime change.
That's racist!
And that never works. You heard it here first. You heard it only. You will hear it here on Gold, Goats, and Guns, because I'm the only one who understands it this way. Because everybody on Wall Street is thinking about what's going to happen next week. They're all worried about whether or not they're going to be able to exit their trades next week. Erdogan's thinking about what's going to happen to Turkey 50 years from now. And that's the fallacy. That's what you have to look through. That's what you have to see strategically is what's going on here. This has been an invited crisis. And it's going to blow back on the EU, and it's going to blow back on the United States. All right, that's all I've got for this morning. This one went a little long, but it was important. There's a lot of technical stuff to talk about. If you like my work, and if you like what you heard here, please give a like and subscribe down below. And you can follow my work over at goldgoatsandguns.com. This has been Tom Luongo. This has been the short news. You guys have a great afternoon and a great weekend. Keep your stick on the ice.